Hi, this is Ernest. Since this was an unusual project, I prepared this slideshow and narrative just to show what goes into the building of my guitars. This guitar was a challenge from the beginning because it was once flooring and had to be sliced up and glued edge to edge to make the back. Of course, the sides were bought separately so they could be bent, unlike the joined flooring pieces which would not hold together if joined and then bent. Here the sliced or resawn boards are laid out and checked for the best wood and what needs to be rejected. Here the boards are laid out and checked for best appearance and grain patterns. A guitar template outline is traced on the boards to help the layout. Here is a better and final layout appears to be taking place. The template lines help a lot. The boards are then taped up with spacers between to acclimatize to the shop atmosphere before gluing up. I try to keep the relative humidity right at 45%. The neck wood has been cut, then split in two for the walnut neck reinforcement lamination. Here it is being glued up. The back braces are cut and ready to start fitting when I get to this part. This is a router table setup for forming the roundover on the back of the curved linings. More on this later. This is a jig used to cut the kerfs or slots in the linings. I use reversed kerfed linings because they are slightly stronger. The Sitka spruce top braces have been cut and bundled, ready to use a little later. There are two sizes here. The back pieces are here being sanded to a consistent thickness for gluing up. Before gluing, they were tapered for best appearance. The white lines of curly maple are sanded to about 1/32 of an inch to go between each back piece. For a change of pace, we've now started on the rosette. This is the initial layout to determine the angles of the individual tiles that make up the rosette. Once the tiles are all the way around the form, we have some idea about the angles required to make the circle. Now put the intermediate tile inlays in to see how much this changes the angles of the tiles. The tiles were then adjusted. Here we are joining the two top book matched top pieces to make the top. I use eccentric wheels to force the two pieces together. The top is now routed out to receive the tiles for the rosette. This is a very exacting process and you only get one chance to get it right. Here's a little better view of the Dremel tool and how the tile grooves gets routed out. Now the tiles are fitted into the routed groove. The space on the left will end up under the fingerboard. These are the inlays that form the perimeter of the rosette after cutting out of a wide strip. They will require a little sanding. Here the purfling strips are being bent over a hot pipe to fit the inside and outside diameter of the rosette. It's somewhat tricky to get this right. Here the decorative strips are purfling and being fitted into new routed grooves. The strips are now glued in and stand proud of the top. They will be sanded flush with the top next. The rosette is now installed in the top and sanded flush. The top is now ready for bracing. Here the back pieces have been tapered and the white inlay strips inserted and the whole back is being glued up. The glued up back is now sanded to a uniform thickness approximately 80 thousandths of an inch. The inside of the back is now having the three cross braces laid out perpendicular to the center line. All those joints of the back need to be reinforced with some overlays inside the back. A go-bar deck is being used here to hold the glue joint tight until dry. The three back braces are now being glued in on the back using the go-bar deck on a 30-foot radius form to keep the back rounded. The 3 cross braces of the back are now being chiseled and planed to the correct shape, then sanded. The top now receives the sound hole reinforcement pieces on the go bar deck. Then the cross braces of the top are added similar to the way the back was done. Different wood, different thicknesses. Now the fan braces are installed on the go bar deck. This is a modified Ramirez bracing with a transverse bar. The installed fan braces are glued on, and this shows them before they have been shaped. This is a laborious process. Finger planes and razor-sharp chisels are used to shape the fan bracings to a very exacting degree. This shows the bent sides placed in the guitar form. Once the linings and the top have been glued to the side, the skeletal guitar will hold the guitar's shape. This is a decorative strip that is on the bridge being glued up. I go to a lot of trouble to make each instrument unique. This is a little after the fact, but the purple device is a jig that is used to route and drill exact holes and slots for the headstock. This is a very precise requirement that has to be done right. This shows the almost completed headstock and the almost complete string clearance slots being chiseled to shape. Here I am starting to carve the next heel area of the foot. Sharp chisels and a steady hand are required. This shows the almost completed heel. The upper part, or Spanish foot, will be inside the guitar body. The sides fit into those slots. Here the kerf linings are being glued to the sides. This lining allows for a sufficient glue area to glue on the top and the back. This shows the top having been glued on, then the kerf linings have been notched in the linings for the back braces. Here's a better view of those notched linings. Finally, we're closing up the box after installing the label and shellacking the insides to seal the inside. The back is in a very precise location. The sides end at the butt, and this joint needs a decorative cover. This shows the walnut strip and the decorative lines on the edges. Now the edges are routed with a router in preparation for the addition of the bindings. You have one chance to get this right. It is a very daunting task. The binding strips and the purfling decorations are now being fitted into those routed slots or rabbets. You need a lot of patience for this. Note that the purfling inlays are mitered at the corners. It helps to have a strong heart here. Now the bindings can be planed and scraped down to the proper levels. The fretboard is now glued on. It must be exactly lined up in every dimension, and it is also tapered in thickness. The neck is now chiseled, planed, scraped, and sanded to the proper dimensions. It takes experience and a keen eye to get it right. The finished bridge now has the saddle preliminarily fitted and is ready for some finish. The saddle slot will be taped up. Here the nut is being fitted to the slot in between fingerboard and headstock. The frets are now hammered into the fretboard slots, then clipped to length. Later they will be leveled and filed, a slow process. Now we have 3 or 4 coats of finish, and the finish is wet sanded to remove surface blemishes and level the finish to fill the grain. It's getting closer. After 10 coats of finish, the guitar quietly hangs to dry from the inside out. It will take 2 weeks to dry, then the hard job of wet sanding progressively finer grits of sandpaper begins to get the surface flat and ready for buffing. After the initial leveling process with 320 grit, after 2 weeks we start with 500 grit and move on to 600, then 800, then 1000 grit before buffing begins. Wet sanding with a finer grit. Note the cross grain wave or bee's wing in the spruce top. Only the finest spruce has this feature. Polishing begins with a pneumatic polisher. After the guitar is polished and buffed, the correct position is laid out on the top and the bridge is glued on. The pins keep it in place while the clamps put the pressure on. The machine heads are installed in preparation for installation of the strings. Stringing up. This is a big day we've been waiting for. Yay! The guitar is complete, but final mechanical adjustments have to be made for playability. It's a great sounding guitar. This is how I built this guitar with hardly any steps left out. It's an arduous process, but a satisfying one. I hope you enjoy the instrument.